Hello everyone, thank you for joining this video. Today you are joined by Abby Williams and Jen Corbett. So you want to give us a little wave, ladies? Thank you.
Hi.
So on this video we're going to be discussing training of your staff and adoption as well. With more organisations now either working from home or adopting the right technology to work from home, we felt this is a really good opportunity for us to actually discuss the training of your employees and the adoption side of things as well. So we want to ensure that you're not just thinking about the here and now and getting the technology in your organisation to enable you to work remotely. We want to discuss kind of the things that package around it as well, which we feel some organisations don't always consider. So we're just here to have a little 10-minute conversation, so hopefully you'll leave this call with a bit more ideas of how training is important for your staff and will help you along your journey. So I'll hand over to you guys if you just want to kick us off.
Yep, I'll start. So one of the key things really from adoption and training point of view is making sure that you've thought about the whole journey and how you're going to get there. So one of the things that always gets perceived is the fact that you just throw some training out and that's it. Everyone will know how to use it, or even worse, you roll out a technology and you think, yeah, they'll be fine. It's intuitive. We'll just leave them to it. That's some of the biggest mistakes you can make. Assuming that people are okay, assuming that they'll just pick it up and go, when really they could be struggling, or they could be getting more out of the technology to help them do their day-to-day job. And one of the things that often gets missed is thinking about the skills gap. So an organization might have had, say, Microsoft Office in for many years, and they haven't really done any training. People have worked their own way around. They've got the basics and they just do what they need to do for their job. But then there could be some people that are really struggling. And obviously, if you're implementing all this new tools and technology, how do you know that they're going to be able to adopt those if they haven't got the basics in place or the core understanding across the board? So that's one of the ways to be able to identify gaps and needs around training. And obviously, that's where Jen comes in around the training needs analysis. So I don't know whether you want to talk a bit about the needs for training.
Yeah, I mean, I think as Abby says, it's really important when we go to our clients, what they're looking to do is roll out new technologies, and they have many reasons for doing this. And usually a lot of this is about adding value, about improving services. So what we need to make sure of is that actually the technology is there, but the users are using it appropriately. So for us, we as a training organisation, we will work with people like Abby and our consultancy team who lead the adoption to understand what an organisation is looking for, what outputs they're looking for, what a positive return on investment looks like for them. We do that and we look then at what training is going to be the most effective, both cost effective, and from a point of view of teaching the skills they require for their learner, for their organisation. So we can do that in lots of ways. We look at how their technical teams are working. So they are obviously very involved in the adoption of technologies anyway, but it's looking at how we can give them the training to ensure that their administration is correct of the technologies. Really important at the moment is the security, with lots of people working remotely. But it's just making sure that they understand what they want to get out of their technology and they have the skills to get there. And there's lots of ways we can do that. We can do certification aligned courses. We do bespoke courses for frontline teams, for teams doing the administration, second line support. All those teams have different needs. So it's about making sure that they've got the training required for that. And once you've got a team in place who are well trained, it's about making sure that they have a pathway for training for the future. So it's not just about doing the training once and stopping. It's about saying, OK, well, we're rolling out something new. We're adopting something new. The technology has been updated. What do we need to do now to make sure that we're still using everything that's available? We're using all our licenses. We're secure, and making sure that people are just getting the best out of an entire package. And of course, once you've done that, you've got all the people at the end. So all your end users across an organisation who actually need to utilise the technologies. I mean, very currently, I guess Teams is a really big thing with people remote working, but it's not just about people being able to do the basics. It's about them to be really able to do a deep dive into what Teams, for example, can do, how they can work collaboratively, how it can make someone's working life easier, how as an organisation you can add value, you can make the most of your employees' time. And the employees learn really valuable skills that allow them to work in different ways. And for us, it's about making sure that training's done at the right time within the adoption campaigns that are being run. So if an organisation is deciding that their priority is collaboration, it's about us going in there and making sure that they can use SharePoint, they can use Teams from both the technical side to ensure that it runs appropriately, but actually that the end users are using it effectively as well. Altogether, that allows an organisation to get the value out of what they're doing. It breeds positivity within their within the adoption process. People are enjoying using the technology. They see the benefits of it. It's positive for the culture, and it's about making sure that then we can go in and we can give that we can help new employees understand the technologies. So it's an ongoing process. And it's making sure really it's around the timing of doing that. And from Abby's point of view, she'll tell you how important it is that the adoption process does run on a timetable that works for the organisation's needs, and that really that the training sits behind that.
Yeah, so I was going to build on that. So one of the key things that we always say when rolling out a change, it could be a smaller change than rolling out a whole suite of Office 365, but the idea is that you have a plan in place, a business engagement plan, so you know what the users are, what their needs are, what are the benefits for an organization and the users, so that we can turn that into what's in it for me, and be able to communicate that as well. Working out which are the best comms channels. So obviously a lot of people are wanting to move away from email, which is quite nice, and use more, and the use of more visual communications and marketing of the whole campaign. So the key thing is to really break down what channels are we going to use, when are we going to use them, and what's the messages we want to get out. And the campaigns are really useful for that. If you build up, say, a campaign that runs for 2 to 4 weeks, and that focuses the minds of the users on a specific area that you're looking to change. Because obviously, if we take Office 365 as an example, there's a lot of stuff in Office 365. And if you just rolled it out big bang, did some comms to say, here's Office 365, did some high level training, and then walked away, everyone's going to forget what you've said. Everyone's going to forget how to use any of it. So it's really about breaking it down and making it easily digestible for all the users. So as Jen said, collaboration is obviously a massive thing at the minute, and that encompasses, say, Teams and SharePoint. So it's about having a campaign dedicated to those two tools, but turning it into more of a user-friendly communication message and training message. So if you run multiple campaigns across the year, you might then go on to extending collaboration. So that might be using things like OneNote and Forms and all the bits that fit into it. And you can rerun them as well, because if we look at getting the value, you want to have success metrics in place, so you know if you're achieving what you said you're going to achieve for the users. And that can be a mixture of user feedback, it can be a mixture of the analytics that sits behind Office 365 to see where the gaps are. So it's being more proactive with your comms and training, rather than just putting out some generic stuff every month, and being able to tailor the message. And also it's around making sure that there's continuous development and upskilling, because there's many times where we've done digital skills gaps assessments, and we've seen that really the length of service, you would expect that people will gain more skill as they stay in the organisation and use the tools more and more, but really it becomes stagnant. and people aren't having the opportunity to be able to personally develop and change the way they work and become more innovative because they haven't got the basic understandings of everything. So I think the key thing really is that it never ends. It's business as usual when you're looking at comms and training. It shouldn't just be, for this project we're going to do a business engagement plan and that's going to be it. It really needs to be thought about as a continuous improvement program throughout the whole life cycle of the organization. It needs to fit in with the strategy and it needs to make sure that people are going to get the most out of what they've got.
I think Abby makes a really good point there, that training is really about, almost as well as teaching people to use the technologies available to them to get the best out of the tools they have, it's also about teaching people to learn, to enjoy learning, to want to continue learning, to make sure that it's not just a one-off, we've learned something and then we walk away. It's about developing skills that allow them to keep up with the technologies long term. It's about developing the skills that help the organisation grow, that help the individual grow. And really, for us, part of what we do at Visual Education is around making sure that the courses we offer are bespoke to each client we work with, so that that interest is retained, so that they aren't just taking away something generic, that they are taking away something that they can use every day within their job roles. They have the underlying skills that they're transferable into other circumstances, but actually the learning they have is specific to what they are doing within their organisation, personal value for the organisation. And most, we want people to have a sense of achievement, for them to actually have pride in what they're learning and to really enjoy doing it.
So I think since since most organisations have started to adopt the right technology over the past 3-4 weeks, say, to enable them to work from home, we've seen a huge rise in Microsoft Teams consumption. So although that's a huge positive thing, people are very quickly adapting to a crazy situation at the moment, and they are thinking ahead almost. They are thinking, right, I need to work from home. This is the right technology. I need to use it. But are you guys seeing trends that, people have that technology, but they can just use it to almost its minimum capacity? They just know how to use it enough to communicate. But are you seeing people not using it to its full advantage? Is that a trend that you're hearing a lot about at the moment?
Yeah, so sorry.
So after you.
So from my side, I'm getting a lot of queries about organisations locking it down, which is quite concerning really from my personal point of view, because I use Teams every day and I know how much potential it's got, but really people are locking it down to just the abilities of Skype used to have. And yeah, I understand there's implications in that around corporate file structures and people putting in files into the wrong place, but really in this time period we need to sort of let those barriers go a bit and allow people to work without having to constantly hit blockers where then they're going to have a negative impact. They'll say, well, this tool really doesn't give me what I need it to do. So we're seeing a lot of impact around that. And even outside of work, the amount of people I get asking me questions about how to use Teams and actually having to help my friends and family out for them to get the most out of it clearly shows me that there's a severe gap from an organizational point of view, that they're not providing them with that, which is quite worrying. It's just basics like being able to have video conversations. How do I save a file? How do I even get onto Teams and get it onto my device? That was the question I had yesterday when they were trying to do a virtual talk, whereas usually they go into an office to have that conversation. And they hadn't even been given the correct guidance and comms of how to actually get the application onto their device. And that's a whole starting point. If you can't even get the application, there's no way you can use it. Yeah. So I'm seeing massive gaps in knowledge and the training around that.
Yeah, and I'd agree with Abby, and I think it's twofold. I think there's a fear from organisations that if they just let people loose with all the tools, they will end up with people using them in a way that doesn't meet their policies and procedures. But I also think that there is a certain amount with organisations where they have access to technologies, but they haven't done the adoption piece. So it's twofold, where they have a technical team who are not confident with administering the system, about making sure that everyone has access, making sure that there are policies in place, that people know what functions they can and can't use and the appropriate usage. I think that's one issue, and there we offer bespoke training for technical teams around that. As I say, some of these are aligned to qualifications, some of these are simply designed around a client's immediate needs. But then the other side of this is obviously because the users haven't seen the technology, they haven't had the opportunity to use it and have training on it. They also don't know what to do when they do have access. And it does become, for example, with Teams, you do find it as ending up as a tool where people just use it to call and message people, and actually miss all the collaborative functions within the technologies that would really help them out. And it is very much that people haven't followed the adoption route of saying, okay, this is the technology we're going to adopt. We're going to make sure our technical teams are familiar, that they understand it, that they can administer it correctly, that they can roll it out within the organisation. They can make sure everyone has access, but they can feel confident to do that because they know that the end users are getting the appropriate training. This is how we want to use it. This is our policies. These are the functions. And again, I think a lot of the fear around this does come back to people's concerns around security. But with the unprecedented situation that we're in at the moment, people are having to use the technology, and organisations do need to make sure that their staff have the skills to use it to really get the best out of them. I mean, one of the training opportunities that our consultancy team around Abby and her colleagues we built round, because they were out and about with people, was our Buzz Days, which is just about giving people a short, sharp 1.5 hour overview of how they can use Teams and SharePoint to collaborate. In that period, we can just make sure that for an organisation, their end users know how to use Teams appropriately, so that they can do all the basics, they can communicate, etc. We then follow that up with a more in-depth, more deep dive into the technologies, again bespoke to how their organisations want to use it, about what functions are available to them. But all these different training methods, going from the sort of an hour and a half, just getting people on board using it, to the very, very technical training for the IT teams, it all fits together to give an organisation the best value out of what they're using. And, you know, we're seeing a trend with people we talk to as we do these courses, that the feedback we get is really that they understand not just how this is helping them today, but how in the long term they could change their organisational structure around this, that people are going to be able to work more remotely, which has lots of organisational benefits. It has lots of benefits on work-life balance for the employee. You know, even if you can go so far as the environmental benefits of people not travelling so much. But people are changing their mindset about how they work, and people want to learn and they want to understand how to use these technologies. But for us, we found that just sending out guidance to people or saying, great, look what we've got Teams now, we can do all these things, doesn't work. You actually need to give people the knowledge and the understanding alongside that. And once they've got that and they use the tools, as new things are rolled out, they're invigorated, they want to learn, they want to go out and say, oh, there's a new function, I'm going to use that. I'm going to almost self-educate at that point. But it's really important that organisations do that at times like this when they're adopting technologies. but also look at the long term. What changes are they making down the line? Have they put training in place to support that? What's their staff turnover like when they're bringing in new members of staff to the organisation? Are they making sure as part of induction those employees understand the technology, that it's being rolled out, that it is just a continual cycle for people to use, and just to make sure that everybody is getting the benefit of the adoption of the technology?
I think you mentioned a few things there which stood out for me. So I think the fear that organisations have is a really big thing, and you just don't think about it sometimes. I think, the current situation is scary enough as it is. Organisations are almost in a mindset of thinking, right, I just need to stay on my feet at the moment, and how do I do that? And that's where the onboarding the technology comes in. That will keep them on their feet. But I don't think, because it's such an uncertain time, you don't know, kind of what's around the corner. You don't know what's going to happen to your organisation. And understandably, everybody's in that position at the moment, right? You don't want to be, of course, nobody does, but it's just happened and there's nothing we can do about that. So I think a lot of places are adopting the technology, but they're not thinking about the long-term value that they can really receive. They're just thinking, I'll take this, I'll take Microsoft Teams for now, and then that's it. When it's back to normal, I'll go back to my old working ways. And you don't want that at all, right? And I think, Abby, you'll know that more than anyone. You see that all the time, day in, day out. It's the package that we have here is incredible because it really thinks about the long-term success of organizations and the long-term value of organizations, rather than I'm going to deliver this project here and now, and I'm only going to have all of my staff using this for the 2 months time that they need to. After that, we're going back to old ways of working. And I think it's a behavioural change. And Jen, you mentioned that a little bit as well, is that the mindset of organisations, although it is adapting now, there really is a behaviour change that we need to start moving, towards a direction that thinks about the long-term value rather than the here and now.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things you said is go back to normal. I think this is the new normal.
Yeah.
I really don't think once people get the taste of being able to work remotely, work more in a more flexible way with the latest tools, I don't think an organisation can go back in 2-3 months' time and say, right, everyone back into the office.
Yeah.
Everyone back to paper-based processes. Everyone back to picking up the phone or going face-to-face for a cup of tea. That's not going to happen. I just don't think it's a new starting point, really. And I think the only way that an organisation is really going to get the benefits, going to get the employee engagement and have a happy organisation in 6 months, 12 months time, is to go forwards with this and really embrace it. And I think one of the key things for me is people that have dragged their heels previously with not getting on board with the new technologies and using Teams and Office 365, it's sort of pushed them along now. And they might have been worried, they might have been scared about all the security side and the adoption and all those elements, but you're here now, and take it as a positive. This has got you to where you need to be, where you should have been probably 2 years ago, but it's got you here now. So now let's make the best of it and move forwards and really put a plan in place for your organisation and your users to totally embed this into their day-to-day role. I think that's one of the key things. You're not going to take away Teams once all this is over. So you've got to embrace it and make the most of it. And I think for the users, because I always get it, it's when you go into an organisation that hasn't even looked at putting in Office 365, or they've just done OneDrive and Exchange, you get the users going, well, I've seen Microsoft Teams advertised on the TV, why can't I use it? And that's the mentality it's getting now. The users are getting ahead of the IT team in what they want and their demands and what they want to be able to use day to day. So I think now it's really harnessing that and saying, well, we've given it you now, and here are the tools for you to be able to really use it to its maximum potential.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's what it's about, using it to its maximum potential, both for the organisation, but for the development of the individual. And I think we all know, and all organisations know, that if you develop and train your individuals and you train them on things that are actually making their working life easier, that allow them to work into new practices, work in new ways, as Abby's touched on, actually, it also makes your employees feel valued. It makes them feel like they're a vital part of the organisation, that the organisation is moving and does value them and wants to develop them. It's not just about having a thing, having a technology, but it's about the people as well. And I think, you know, that's a really good message, particularly when you are looking at things like collaboration and communication.
And you raise a point about people feeling empowered and part of an organisation. Recently, when we've been working with clients, one of their key things and issues has been attrition, and the fact that they can't keep hold of staff, because they go for an interview at another place and they're using all this new technology. They've got a nice shiny device, they can work remotely, they can work from anywhere. I know which organisation I'd rather work in. And I think that's where it's become more competitive. You've got people coming out of university that are used to using new technologies in personal lives and in their education. So why would they want to go backwards? And I think that's one of the key things with organisations, is they need to realise they need to be competitive, not only in the services they provide, but also in what they provide to the users.
Yeah, and I think for us, when we look at different organisations, the clients we work with, lots of organisations offer lots of benefits for their employees in all sorts of ways. But training is really one of the biggest benefits you can offer your employees. It is one of the things that breeds loyalty, because allowing people to develop and grow and improve within an organisation, as Abby says, it gives people a value that means they want to stay within the organisation. But above that, we very often find that when we have engagements, when we're supporting adoption and training, lots of organisations, you end up with members of staff who will actually want to be champions of your digital technology. So we end up with groups of people who we pull together, who we give that bit of extra training. We give them some support to understand how they can disseminate that training down within their organisation, how they can add value, how they can support best practice within the organisation. And again, you're empowering a group of people within the organisation who are driving the requirements, are driving adoption, but they're also developing skills within themselves. And again, it's just about the value that they're getting out of it as an individual has a massive impact on the organisation as a whole.
Lovely. Okay, so I think, should we wrap it up there then?
Yep.
Are you happy? Yeah, lovely. Yep. Cool, so thank you everyone for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the video today. Again, this has kind of been the first time we've done it in this format, so hopefully you've all enjoyed it. But please do give us a follow on our social media channels. You'll get links to lots more content like this and a lot more support and information and insights as well, especially on this topic. So if you do have any questions or you want to leave us any feedback, please feel free to comment or let us know on our social channels. But yeah, we'll wrap it up there, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.